Welcome to the magical journey beyond mediocrity, where the mystical and the practical become aligned. You're listening to Meant for More, the Seeker's Guide to Success, with your host, Seeker's Guide and coach, Kristen Lloyd. Kristen guides you through mindset shifts to increase your consciousness and live your best life. So let's leave mediocrity behind and step into your magical, magnificent life with Kristen.
Good morning, happy peeps. How is everybody doing today? Welcome back to the Meant for More, the Seeker's Guide to Success show. I am your host and Seeker's Guide, Kristen Lloyd. I am once again so incredibly grateful that you've all tuned in for today's show. This is episode 13 of the Meant for More show, lucky number 13. Today, our special guest is Sharon Holmes. Sharon is a super connector and relationship marketer for brands and businesses. In 2013, she went solo as a business intermediary and strategic alliance consultant, helping entrepreneurs and small business owners develop partnerships and joint venture opportunities at the $5, $6, and $7 figure mark. Now she's using her connections to co-create the Mad Studio Collective, an open talent network that features a growing vetted community of marketing, art, and design experts who've combined forces to offer done with you and white label digital marketing services for entrepreneurs and brands in the expert industry. Wow, Sharon, you are amazing. Thank you so much for being here. Yay!
Thank you so much for having me. And you are just as amazing, Kristen. So wonderful space, wonderful concept. I love it. So very glad to be here.
And you're lucky number 13. How awesome is that?
I think it's awesome. I like the number 13.
So the first question I ask my guests, or I've really started to ask my guests as the show has developed, is the personal Meant for More story, which is what this show is all about, because the theme is that we all are meant for more. We're not drones. We're not going through this life just, as cattle. We all have a story. We all have a vision. We all have a truth. And every individual that I've brought on this show, including yourself, and, even into the future shows, the guests that I have lined up, everyone has a very specific Meant for More story. And I would love, 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 love to hear yours and how you got to where you are.
Yes, I would love to share that. It's very similar, I'm sure, to a lot of other people's stories, in that I was triggered by my family. I was triggered by my beautiful 4 children. At the time, it was only 3 children because I was pregnant with our last. And that last pregnancy kind of had me thinking about the ways of the way that we handled the previous ones. The kids had to go back to daycare or back to with family members while I went back to work and made money so I could put them in daycare. And, it felt like this big catch-22. And so it birthed a desire in me. So I was pregnant with this child and pregnant with desire. I was just pregnant. And
that's awesome.
Yeah, it was just all around, in the soul, in the spirit, in my body. I was birthing things, and I think it was that the metaphor there and the physicalness of birthing something, but wanting to birth something in my spirit that made me just say, I can't do it anymore. And I had a really good reason to. I really wanted to stay home and nurse this child and be there longer than I had for the other ones. And I just made the decision. I said, you know what? When I leave here, I don't think I'm going to come back. In fact, I know I'm not going to come back. I'm going to do what I can on my time off to discover the things that I love and the things that make me me, and the things that that I had kind of let go of because I felt like I had to as a mom, and I had to do what the society said was the right way to handle raising a family nowadays. So I stopped what I was doing. I got still and I started to explore the things about me that I missed. For instance, when I first started building a family, I was young. We were very young. I was 20 and 21, 21 when I had her, and I stopped modeling. I stopped going on photo shoots and being in photo shoots. I stopped studying film. I stopped traveling. I stopped doing all this stuff. And so I thought, well, that's where
All
I
the
kind
things
of,
that you loved.
yeah. And it was very gradual. It was more of a, well, we can't really do this anymore. And, it's, you just kind of traded things off for settling down into this family life. And, big mistake on my part, not because it wasn't worth, the memories that I have now, but there is a way you can have it all. You can have it all. You just can't do it all. So that was what I had to come to realize. And in doing so and realizing that I could have it all, but I couldn't do it all, I also realized that I had to make my dreams, my calling, my soul contracts a priority. And part of that was being a connector, living my talents out loud in a way that brought that magnified and glorified the gifts that I'd been given. So it was actually kind of by accident that I discovered the super connector skill. I really wasn't sure what to call it. I just knew that when you sat me down and if there were resources or people or ideas or organizations or anything like that, that somehow I could find a connection and see how they all should be related, and this person should be talking to this person, and you need this resource, so you should talk to this resource, and this organization could help too. And pretty soon you had this wonderful, intricate system that everybody was winning. And it was shortly after my first 5-figure deal that I helped to orchestrate that somebody pulled me aside and said, "Hey, sweetie, you should probably be doing this like as your thing. Have you ever heard of a business intermediary? Do you understand what they do?" And I was like, "Never in my life. What is that?" And they're like, "Well, it's exactly what you do. You're helping decision makers meet other decision makers for the purpose of either building joint ventures or strategic alliances." And I thought, well, yeah. So I kind of focused on that for a little while, and that went great. Although I did have a chance to meet my anti-customer, anti-client. And so what I ended up doing was basically parlaying all of those skills into a business intermediary, super connector like company business, where that's what I did. I introduced decision makers to decision makers so that they could do awesome things together.
That's very, very fascinating. And I think there's like about 100 questions going through my head right now. But I'm going to start with one. And that one question is how, it's always a how question, right? How
Sure.
do you, as a connector,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this is probably a very easy question for you to answer. As a connector, how do you make the connections with the decision makers to then place yourself as the intermediary? Like, do you already have a relationship with one of them and then seek out the other and work on their behalf? Or I get this picture of like, the circus, like the guy who's like, he's hanging from one ring and he's connecting to the other ring, like that kind of.
That's what it feels like. Oh, okay. This is a really good question because for a while I didn't get it. Like, when people say like you don't understand the things that make you awesome because you're kind of blind to them. They're just normal everyday things to you, but to everybody else it's just like, whoa. So it took me a while to get this because I was like, I don't know, it just happened. So, but when I started to deconstruct the process, something that I learned was the first thing that happened was I was energized by an idea, a resource, a person, or an opportunity. Something like that just really charged me and energized me. And at that point, my brain does something And it reminds me of like the movie, what's that movie called? A Beautiful Mind. You know, when things like start lighting up for him, with Russell Crowe, he looks at things and the patterns start literally illuminating. And
Yes.
that's what
Yes.
happens. So I'll read. And so from then on, once I have that one thing that's just pricked me to the core, that I can't let it go, that there's something there, I know that's me. That's the super connector in me being pulled to something that's going to lead to something else. And so I innately will see things in other people, and I'll be reading newspapers and articles will just pop out at me like, whoa, this person needs to talk to this person. So usually it starts with a connection on my part, something that, you know, that I connect to personally. And then that connection in me seems to open the floodgate for the other connections that need to come in for that. And I start collecting them. I just am intentional about it. I'm conscious about it. And I start collecting these as if they were clues. Even if it doesn't make a whole lot of sense, even if it doesn't seem like it fits, but it does, and you're not sure how or where, it's almost like you're collecting the pieces to a 1,000-piece puzzle. You don't judge the pieces. You just put them on the table and maybe even organize them in a way that they all look like they're supposed to be together in some way, shape, or form. And that's really what it starts out as, is just inspiration and illumination of certain pieces of the puzzle that are just asking for me to kind of pull them in together. And I say that because it's not always people, when they say, you know, how does this process start, or how, you know, what does it look like? A lot of people just think super connectors are people that connect people, and many of them are, but most of them go beyond that, and it's their nuances to the connection. They connect people's desires to other people's desires to help those kind of people. They connect ideas to the people that want to build ideas. They connect opportunities to the people who are out there searching for resources. So it's not just about connecting a person to a person, although at the heart, that's usually what it comes down to, is that you end up connecting one person's desire capacity to serve to another person's desire capacity to be served. And pretty soon you just become the and of supply and demand. And I think at on a spiritual level, when you really give into that gift, if you're a super connector, even if you haven't honed that, you just know that you just connect dots. If you tap into that on a spiritual level, magic starts happening. All of a sudden you start receiving connections that that I don't know how to explain it. It's like connections that you don't know that you're waiting on. That's the best way I can explain it. So really magic starts to happen when you're intentional and when you're being conscious connectors.
So at the time when you were pregnant, and I'm going back to your story.
Sure.
Were you working in corporate at this time?
I sure was. I had a 14-year hiatus. That's what you would call it. 14-year hiatus hiding out in corporate America. And I loved the people. I loved what was possible in terms of being a connector, but there were just things that hurt my soul more than I can imagine. It was being looked over for certain positions, having ideas kind of stolen, if you will. And
right.
My intellectual property is really super important to me above a lot of other things. So, you know, it was time to go. There were things that I wasn't able to align myself with in terms of like policies. And I understand corporations are not the small businesses and entrepreneurs. You know, we have this ability to kind of choose how we run our business. And so unless your values are aligned with the business that you choose to go in, sometimes there can just be these huge conflicts within you about how you're handling situations according to policy. So, you know, it was time to go. My heart was like, it's time to move on, which was really hard because, again, I'd been in corporate America for 14 years. It was safe. I had a nice, you know, salary. I had the recognition that I enjoyed. Mm-hmm. You know, there were things there that did make it cushy and make it so that it was a leap of faith.
as a connector, right? Because I understand the concept as you've explained it.
Mm-hmm.
How is this different from a very strategic salesperson? Like, because if you're linking, and you said it's not always people. So if you're linking someone who has a need for services with someone who provides those services, how is that different from being a glorified salesperson?
That is a great question. And here's my answer to that. There is not necessarily a difference between a salesperson and a connector, in that a connector could be just an awesome salesperson. That could be how it manifests for them. But a salesperson isn't the only type of connector. Another, let me give you for instance, restaurateurs, a lot of them are super connectors. It seems like they have this like web of access to different avenues of people and resources and roles and opportunities. And it was interesting. I was like, wow, there must be something to this. So what I found is that certain roles expose and illuminate the gifts of a super connector more than others. So it's not so much that there's a difference. It's just that it's a talent that goes beyond the sales, the sales structure or the sales process. But honestly, people who are in sales, and I don't want to say that's everybody, but there are a lot of amazing salespeople that are super connectors, and you can tell because they go beyond just selling for the sake of selling. It's about connecting. And that's really the difference. It's not the selling that triggers them. It's the connection that triggers them. And they're finding their passion through sales.
Right.
But they could be a business intermediary like I was, or a restaurateur like some of the people that I've talked to. They could be somebody in, venture capital and private equity. Tons of connectors. Am I a financial, guru? Is that my zone of genius? No, but that is a category or an area of expertise that seems to breed that super connector skill. It draws them in. I'm trying to think of a couple others that stand out to me. Coaching is a big one because of the connection that you have to make, not only to self, but to your clients. So you've really pointed out one that really stands out to me, which is sales, because again, you're connecting the dots. It's that being the and of supply and demand. And so it's kind of, you can be one, but that doesn't mean it's exclusive to you being a connector. But
Right.
A lot of connectors are salespeople for that reason.
Right. And I love you're so right. Connection is a human foundation. I mean, beyond, like, I know that in the context that we're talking about it, it's in the place of business. But at a very primal soul level, we are built for connection. We're built for connection.
So right. Yes, we are. We are so built for connection. We are hardwired for connection. Our brains are nothing but massive balls of connection happening every millisecond. So yes, the very source of our life is about connection, and it can seem very ethereal and very very woo woo at sometimes, but then when you take it down to a very basic level, it's actually very tangible and physical and measurable and scientific and logical. So that's one thing that I think is pretty unique about connection, that as far out there as it is, it's still very, very logic and basic and understanding, and very foundational in terms of the concept. And here's the thing about connecting. It is the more intentional that you can be about it, and the more that you can break it down to an energetic action, the more that the connection itself kind of unfolds and unveils the power that it has. It's when we really stop and break it down on an energetic level, and so for instance, before you get on the call or before I get on the call, either of us might have just sat and paused and taken a moment to breathe and to visualize the power that's going to be exchanged between you and I. We might have sat and thought about the things that could happen, the people that could be touched, the wisdom that could be imparted to somebody who's just waiting for that exact word to trigger something great in them. All of the things that you can do, the visualization, meditation, all of that is intentional, conscious connecting. And that's where I'm saying we could go so much deeper into not only our lives, but our business strategies, our business goals, everything, through using the power of intentional connection. Because that's where the magic happens anyway. It doesn't really happen in the doing of the thing. It happens in connecting the energies of whatever you're trying to bring about, whether it's an energy that exists here now and you're trying to connect to it, or it's an energy that hasn't manifested in this realm yet, and you're trying to pull it to you. So now I'm talking about manifesting, which is what most people call it.
You know what's so fascinating is that your desire in that birthing process of yours, your desire to have a deeper connection with your baby, with your family, is what spurred your journey in connecting with others. So again, it's all about connection.
Yes, like total goosebumps here, but yeah, that is exactly what it is. And you see how it feeds the other pieces of you. That connecting on the level where I was able to just go, Sharon, this isn't it. And I know you're scared. I know you don't know what's going to happen next. I know this feels like a big step for you, but you have connected to something, a desire, right? So deep within you that you can't deny it anymore. And if you can trust the power of that connection, the energy that's coming to you, that's feeding you, that's driving you towards this thing that you don't even know what it is yet, if you could just trust that, I promise. It's just kind of like a feeling of me telling me it's okay, go. And that's of this connector or connection of this connection paradigm, that the power of connecting to one thing breeds power and connection into the rest of your existence. Everything starts opening up. It's not isolated. Connection comes down to a very universal energy. And so, like you had said, it was me connecting to my unborn child, connecting to my desires as a mother, connecting to my desires of how I wanted to show up in life, that led to me connecting to my soul, my ideal client.
Right.
I serve the people that I don't serve, So all of that came from that one step towards connection.
How is connection the master strategy in business?
Oh, I love this. Let's take these in general. We've got a sales strategy. You've got a marketing strategy. You've got you might have an online social media strategy. You have strategy on top of strategy. In fact, the strategies breed more strategies within themselves. Blogging strategy. You might have a content strategy. So let's just talk about these strategies alone right here. What is the point of blogging? Well, the point of blogging is to generate leads, usually to a sales funnel. It's also to educate. It's also to help your readers, your followers, find their path, educate them, give them value, help them understand that you're the solution, right? So you're communicating. You are at the very connect to your audience. So literally, the point of your blog is connection. That's it. At the very base level, all you're trying to do with a blog is connect to somebody who has a problem. Usually, we'll say in the business realm. I know there's bloggers out there that don't necessarily, offer solutions in terms of business needs and things like that. But for where we play, that's what we use our blogs for. We want to connect to these people so that they see us as a viable option when they're ready to search for a solution. And we want to be able to connect with them. Not only that, to convey that information, but we want to connect with them so that we open the doorways and the pathways for us to understand them. So again, we're just trying to establish connection. Go back to your content strategy. What is at the heart of your content strategy? Connecting with your ideal audience. What is at the heart of a sales strategy? Connecting your solution to the needs of your clients. What is at the heart of your marketing strategy? You see what I'm saying? At the heart of every
flows.
Strategy in business is this very basic level of connection. And what I'm saying is if that's the basis of everything we do in business, why don't we have connection strategies? Most of us, I think it's 90 some odd percent of businesses don't have a connection strategy. And I'm not just talking networking, although that is a piece of it. That's a sliver of it. That's a facet of it. But when I'm talking about connection strategies, I mean the on a energetic level, like when we are talking about, like I said, before we got on the call today, a very viable connection strategy is being still and connecting to your energy before I even jump on the call.
Right.
What if we did that before we jumped on discovery calls and strategy sessions? What if the people that we were pulling in terms of taking strategy calls and discovery calls somehow hated and made space for that energy in the form of connecting? Those are the things that might seem kind of woo, that don't affect anything, but they are very, very potent in terms of how they affect. Because again, your strategy that's at the heart of what we're doing. All of our soul content has been given to us in this realm, and the only way that we can tap into that is by connecting. And so it's an encouragement more than it is an indictment. I don't want anybody to feel like they're not doing something right, but it is worth asking yourself, how can I make connection a focus in terms of being the master strategy in my business and even in my life? Because it will give you so much, it'll give you a lot of insight and wisdom in terms of where to take the next step. That's when the clues start popping up. That's when it starts to feel like you're a master sleuth in your own life, and you're like discovering all these clues that exist, all these connections, and you're like, oh, this is going to lead somewhere. This is going to take me somewhere, man. And that's what I want people to realize when it comes to connection.
Well, and that leads me to my very next question. If everything in life and business comes down to connection, then how do we know which connections to focus on first to move us ahead?
A great question, because I honestly, for a long time, wasn't sure about that. It wasn't that I wasn't sure. It was I could needed to be answered. Like, well, if I'm saying that connection is the master strategy, and that will lead you to the perfect strategies and all this other stuff, then how do they know? And if everything's connection, then how do they know? How do they even know, or I even know for that matter, what to focus on? And
intuition, is it bigger than that?
It's bigger than that. I think it's part of it. It is certainly part of it, but I think we can be more strategic than that. I like strategy. I like plans. I like knowing the who, what, when, where, why of what we're doing, and the how, of course. And I like maps. Who doesn't love a roadmap, especially when you're in business?
Sounds so much like me. I'm right? Like, wow, show me the picture. How are we going to get there? I love the vision piece, but I've got to have the steps.
Yes. And this is where I say we got to balance our woo with our do. If you're woo, that
I
is
love that. That is
perfectly
a
fine.
tweetable. That is
Yes,
a tweetable.
totally tweetable.
You've
Totally
got,
tweetable.
okay, say it again. Say it again.
You've got to balance your woo with your do.
Oh my gosh, I'm writing
So
it.
I call it practicing your voodoo. It's not voodoo, it's voodoo. It is making sure that you're backing up that all those woo things that we do, like connecting with energy and all, all the fun stuff that we like to do, backing that up with action. Inspired action, if we can if we can muster. That is the key. So here's where I was like, okay, it's great, this connection thing is great, but how do I make that work for me in my business? How did this happen? Because what it was a result of me going, holy crap, this shit works, or this stuff works. And I look back and I go, but what were the steps? How did I do this? And then I all of a sudden realized that I wasn't the only one doing this. That these were the connections. So essentially what I did is I started writing down the connections and started trying to find the connection between the connection. And that's where I came up with the 22 connections of freedom. And those were the 22 connections that every single time I broke down some miraculous event or some amazing opportunity that came up, or maybe it was just somebody in business where I was like, wow, I love what they're doing. I love their calling. They're so alive and vivacious and vibrant. How did they get there? What were the steps that they took, right? When you're deconstructing your mentor a little bit, kind of behind the scenes, kind of looking at like following their footsteps and seeing the things that they did and they implemented in their business. Mm-hmm. These same 22 connections came up over and over and over again. And it might have been different wording, you know what I mean? Different terms and things like that. But at the heart, these connections just seem to kind of reveal themselves. And I've broken them down into 3 main categories. You've got your core connections.
Okay.
You've got your critical connections, and then you've got your cash flow connections. So what I'll do is I'll give you guys the connections real quick. And I'm also having my virtual assistant make like a quick
like a PDF
checklist.
Or something?
Yeah, like a quick checklist that you can give your peeps, because again, this is really what this is the framework, the checklist or the roadmap that I followed that led me from being absolutely clueless about how I wanted to show up in business to making 5, 6, 7-figure deals before I even decided what I was doing in business. So I was getting results.
That's amazing.
For people before I even understood what I was doing. I had used the connections to lead me to the places that I needed to be. And so this is what it was. So, and you'll recognize this in my, when I was talking about being pregnant. I think you'll see where I was in the core connections. So the first thing you need that we would want to do is we want to align, alchemize, and amplify your core connections. So you're going to align your energy to the core connections. You're going to alchemize the power of your core connections by making almost a Venn diagram of them and staying in that sweet spot in the middle. And by coming up with different ways that you can tangibly pull those together in terms of like maybe careers or a soul path, however you want to put it. And then the last thing is you're going to amplify these core connections through inspired action. That's that woo-do piece, right?
Right.
So align, alchemize, and amplify these core connections. And your core connections are your core vision, your core desire, your core inspiration, your core strengths, your core beliefs, and your core values. Vision, desire, inspiration, your strengths, your beliefs, and your values. We've all heard of those. We've all dealt with those. Especially if you're in business, you've dealt with your vision. You've probably gotten deep into the desire. Right. You know what inspires you. You're confident in your strengths.
Yeah.
You understand what you believe now, right? Whether it's limiting or not, we're usually aware of what our beliefs are, and of course our values. So by doing this, by aligning, alchemizing, and amplifying these connections, you're tapping into, and you're going to be able to, and I'm going to use this as a business example, you would be able to discover and focus on your calling and purpose. These connections will help you to choose a niche. These connections will help you identify your ideal scene that you're going towards, right? Where am I at? Where am I going, right? These core connections will help you uncover the unique ways that you like to serve. So you're not just building somebody else's business because that's what so-and-so's doing, or that's the model that they're doing. This is where you develop the quote-unquote me side of your brand. And so again, by aligning that energy, alchemizing the power of it, and then amplifying that energy through the inspired action, that's where you're going to be able to find the answers and tap into the connections for the results that I had mentioned. And by alchemizing, what I mean is how can these core connections be combined to create opportunities to serve? How can I take what I believe, what I desire, the visions that I have for my life, what I'm inspired by, the things that I'm really good at, and my values? How can I mix those together to create an opportunity to serve? And that's where you're going to find your sweet spot. And that's really what I did, but I didn't know what I was doing at the time. So let's see. That's the first. So that's the first one. The second one was,
so then we're going to critical.
That's the core connection. So now you understand, of course, like it wouldn't make much sense to start anywhere else, right?
Right.
Like you got to start there, right? And that's exactly what happened when I was pregnant.
Those are the foundation. You've got to have a foundation before you build the house. You can't have a roof without a foundation.
Exactly. And you'll understand why too, because the next step, the critical connections is like your network. So you've found what you want to do. You know what you're strong at. You're like, whoa, I'm on fire. Like I have this desire and this inspiration and these visions for a future. And I believe in this shit. I know I can do this. And there's
you can say shit. It's okay.
It just slipped out every time.
Believe me, we've had people that have said worse. Don't worry. Don't hold back.
Good. So you're really on fire now, right? But you still might be a little bit like, I don't know which way to go. I need some more clues. This is when you're going to tap into your critical connections. And if you have been intentional about connecting, you have a network that can be audited, that you can ask, and that you can assist. So you're going to audit your network. You're going to ask them really hella smart questions, and then you're going to assist and serve. And so the people that I've given you now, so we just talked about 6 core connections.
Yeah.
Now we've got 9 critical connections. And this is where we start to do something fun that I tapped into as a connector, and it was definitely a part of my one-on-one work as a business intermediary, and that is relationship mapping. Right. Relationship mapping helps you visualize the connections that you have. And let me tell you, at a high level, there are some businesses out there who have taken relationship mapping to the next level. They can map your relationship to the top 10% of investors and business mover and shakers in the world. So there is some amazing technology out there that not only brings this to life, but proves that this is the key. It basically helps you, as I said, to visualize what you're working with. And so those 9 connections that I say to focus on are, of course, connectors. And everybody has a connector now in their realm. I'll be your connector. Subject matter experts, SMEs. Influencers, trendsetters, up and comers, visionaries, gatekeepers, decision makers, and then artists and designers. If you can nail about 5 people or so, and that's usually my goal, is my challenge. So, if you can get 3, great. If you can get 5 people that you can list off in each of these, then wonderful. 5 times 9, I think, is what, 45.
Let's go over that list really quickly again.
Yes,
Connectors.
absolutely. Connectors.
Subject matter experts.
Yes.
Influencers.
Yes.
Trendsetters.
Mm-hmm.
Who's next?
Up and comers.
Up and
so these are the people that They're up and coming, man. They're going to be there. They're going to be the next influencers, the next trendsetters.
The visionaries.
Yes.
The gatekeepers, decision makers, and artists and designers. So
yes.
Because we don't have the time, as much as I could talk to you for hours, we don't have the time. Before we end, I want to make sure that everyone listening is able to access a copy of who are the connectors other than, yourself, who are the subject matter experts, who are the influencers, who are the trendsetters. So like a little mini definition or something, because this 22 connections to freedom, it sounds like it's a business mapping strategy.
It really is. And I will, like I said, I'm going to
and I can put it on my website. We can connect people to your website before we go today, because this is blowing my mind right now.
I love it. Yes, I will make sure that you get it, and we'll make sure that it's posted. I'll give you real quick the last 6, which are the cash flow connections.
Okay, awesome. Let's hear them. Hear them.
Yeah, these
Everybody
are the connections.
Get your pens ready.
These are my favorite. So we've gone from core connections. We've gone from critical. Now we're ready for the cash flow connections. Now that we've got the support and we've got the foundation, now we can hit these cash flow connections. So what you're going to do with these cash flow connections, and of course they all conveniently start with A, you're going to seek advice, you're going to apply what you've learned, and then you're going to advance and repeat. Okay, so these are the cash flow connections. You've got your mindset, you've got your mastermind, you've got your ideal clients, you've got your divine partners, you have your coach/mentor, and you have, probably most importantly, your story. Those are the connections that are going to make you money in business. Your mindset, your mastermind, your ideal clients, your divine partners, your coach and your mentor, and your story. You nail those 6 connections, you will make money. Period. There's no way you can't.
Your mindset, your mastermind, your ideal clients, your coach, mentor, and your story. What am I missing?
And the divine partners. And your divine partners are like your joint venture crew. In the world of business, it would be like Marie Forleo and Danielle Laporte and all them. Those are their divine connections or divine partners. Those are the people that are just meant to take this ride with you in business, and that you guys kind of feed off of each other and help each other out and that sort of thing.
Like you cross promote.
Yeah, exactly. And in a very salesy, smarmy sort of way, it's like your affiliates. You know what I mean? But it can go so much deeper, and that's why I
love affiliates. I don't think affiliates are slimy at all.
And some people I think are have experienced the ones that are affiliates just for the sake of being affiliates, and it's like, oh, they've got a 40% payback. That's not a divine partner.
Yeah,
a divine partner is somebody who it's more a part of the spirit of your business and the soul of your business. They're more invested in you than they are what they're getting in return for selling your product.
Yeah. I was just going to say, on the integrity scale, I cannot back something. I don't care what the kickback is. For me personally, I cannot back something unless I'm wholeheartedly, again, in alignment with what that person or company or entity is producing. And so for me, 40% kickback or not, if I'm not aligned with what your message is, I'm not doing it.
Right, exactly. And guess.
But not everybody's like that. And I get that.
Right. No, they're not. Okay, so with that in mind, now that you know that, where do you think you need to go, or where do you think you reference to know if it's a divine partner? Within these core connections, let's say you find that divine partner in your critical connections. Well, how do you know if it's a divine partner? Well, you go back to your core connections. Is it aligned? Is their business aligned with your beliefs, your strengths? All of those, the values and all that stuff.
Right. Vision,
it's like a
desire,
checks and balances
inspire,
system.
Right. Beliefs, values, strengths. Yeah.
Right. So you can use that as a tool to uncover who it is that you're supposed to be working with. And you really want to tap into these cash flow connections. This is where you tap into these connections to uncover your upper limit problems, to transform your money story, to uncover acts of self-sabotage. This is where you start to collapse the timeline of your success. You start to create in-demand products and services because, hey, you're connected to your ideal client, really connected. I'm not just talking like checking something off. I'm talking like you're connected to their desires, to their feels, to their unspoken dreams and visions. You're connected to the things that they don't admit to. You're connected to the things that they try to put off as who they truly are. All of those things are a part of this connecting at a soul level. And if you'll notice, if you add these up, I've given you 21 connections, and it used to be the 21 connections to freedom. But there's one connection that's the quantum connection, and it goes beyond all of this.
Connection.
It is the quantum connection. It is the quantum connection, and it is your connection to spirit.
Woohoo!
I can't tell you who that is or what you call it. I won't pretend to give you this almighty, this is the path to that. We all know how
it's
how
a very
deep that
personal
connection
path.
is. Yes. So I would never be that person to tell you that this is the way that you find that. But for me, none of this would have happened. None of this would have come into play if I hadn't connected to spirit first. So that is the quantum connection. That's the one that really makes all these other connections come alive.
Right.
And if you're ever stuck, if you ever can't find your way through this map, that's the connection that exposes. That's the connection that loves you through the tough times. That's the connection that keeps you going when you're like, I am done. I don't want to do this anymore. I had the worst day ever. I have a client that hates me, and apparently nobody likes me on social media. You know what I mean? When you're having that day, the spirit connection is what lifts you and what pulls you back to where you need to be.
Right. Wow. These are amazing. So I have a couple more questions and time is ticking, but these are amazing. Sure. And I love this. Okay. What signs, what are the signs that someone may be a super connector, and what advantages does that give one? How would being a super connector be an advantage in business?
Oh, well, first of all, one of the ways is because a super connector is a very coveted role to have in your critical connection, in your network. If you've spent any time in business, especially at a high level, to where it's like you're hanging out with a lot of decision makers. Mm-hmm. It isn't long before you find somebody or they introduce you to somebody like, gosh, he just knows everybody. Let me just call so-and-so and I'll make it happen. Or they'll know what to do.
Right.
You become that go-to person for people. And that is actually one of the ways that you can identify yourself as a super connector. For me, I could not tell you why, especially before I really started in business, but everybody in my circle just came to me. Like I was just the go-to person. Well, Sharon would know somebody or Sharon would know who to talk to.
Right.
If you're that person for your circle and you're the one that everybody goes to for referrals, to find out to find out where resources might be, to be directed to certain people, that is a huge, huge indication that you're a connector. If you hoard information, so for instance, newspapers, because there was that be a connector. Perfect in business, in terms of everybody wanting to have you in. You need to know. The resources that they need to be connected to. And the really awesome thing about a super connector is they transcend markets. They transcend industries. So usually you'll find them at the heart of, it seems like everything. It's like, God, you're everywhere with everybody. How are you doing that? How do you do that? Well, again, what they've done is they've probably recognized something in one of these people about to something else. And
so they've
honestly,
recognized things in other people.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yes. That's a huge piece of it, is that, and it's not just recognizing other things. Usually they recognize the potential and they recognize like where they're going. So for me, I can always remember, I will say 98% of the time, I remember something that somebody wants to do, or a goal that they have, or a dream, or a vision, or a belief, like that they believe, like I've always wanted to be a master chef. They might be a mechanic right now, right? But they've always wanted to be a master chef. Now, a super connector is going to remember the master chef piece, and those are the connections that they're going to funnel to that person. They're not necessarily going to send them their referrals for fixing cars. They're going to go, oh, I remember that he was saying that he always wanted the opportunity to be a master chef. Hey, guess what? You know, this chef is going to be in town next Tuesday. You should definitely check him out. That's what a super connector does. They connect on a level that's at the soul. So they usually get past the fluff of what the person's doing in the physical realm, because it doesn't always match up, right? What you want in your heart doesn't always match up to what you're able to do right now. And that's, I think, one thing that you pointed out that they do. We see where they're at, and we're able to connect that to where they want to be.
So for
and
our
in
audience,
business, that's huge.
So if I'm not a super connector, right? And many of our audience will be, now they're going to be have the lookout for who a super connector is. Right. But if you're not a super connector, what are some ways that we can learn how to be a more conscious connector?
Yes. First of all, a way that you can be a more conscious connector is by understanding the power of energy, how it works, how it flows. You should be a master energy worker. There's no reason why all of us can't be. We're all capable of tapping into energy at a very high level. So I would definitely recommend that be the first thing. Get absolutely fascinated by the way energy works, the way energy connects, because that's the very foundation of connection in and of itself. I also would recommend the relationship mapping, because connectors have innate ability to sense these connections, to feel them, and they're able to kind of be led by this curiosity that seems to kind of pull them to the next connection that they need to be in. And that's something that happens very, as I said, innately. It just kind of happens. But for somebody that doesn't seem to happen, making the connection through relationship mapping can be the visual that you need to see of where to go. So take the time to map out your critical connections. And then more than anything, once you've mapped them out, make sure you reach out to them. Even if you just took those 5 connections times 9, we said there's 45 connections. If you made it a point to stay connected to those 45 people throughout a month, you would have one of the strongest, most robust networks of anybody. That would be a very doable goal, even if it seems, because a lot of introverts say, "Whoa, 45 people? I don't even talk to 45 people in a year." Like, okay, well, there's your challenge. Start with 3, try to work your way up to 5 people in each category, but map those relationships out and make it an intentional strategy to connect with them on a monthly basis.
And what does that look like?
Oh, yeah, very easily. What I would do is I would set up something like in Trello. I love Trello because the boards age themselves. And so if you haven't contacted somebody in a long time, you can visually see the board start to age or the card age. And you're like, oh, I need to follow up with this person. And so every month, you're just going to reach out. There might be something that you find, and, maybe somebody got you see that they got a promotion. Hey, congratulations on your promotion. That's really awesome. What are you working on these days? Or what's the new function of your role? Is anything coming up for you? Really just reaching out and seeing how you can serve is a huge piece of the puzzle. And eventually it's not so awkward because they're used to hearing from you. They are in your circle anyway. You've built a rapport, you've built a relationship. Eventually it's just one friend reaching out to another and saying, hey, what's up? I just wanted to check in. I loved your article the other day. I loved that blog post. Let's get together, girl. You and I do this all the time.
Yeah.
We're not best friends in terms of being able to talk all the time, but man, when we get on the phone, we are like clockwork. It's like we never skipped a beat.
Right.
It's there. I know if there's anything at all, like Kristen's always kind of in the back of my head of if somebody said, who do you know who, you would be somebody that would pop into my head if it was a good fit. And that's what you want. You want to stay top of mind, and you want to be somebody who they see as an asset. And again, it isn't about give and take in the terms of, I want. And so I'm going to strategically finagle my way in there so that I'm, it's none of that. And most people don't operate in that sense anyway. So it's not really that much of a big deal, but I think people are afraid that that's how they'll come across.
Right.
And so they, it kind of makes them kind of weird in terms of like, I don't know if I should reach out. But you're not starting with a whole bunch of strangers either. You're starting with your network and the people that probably, the reason why they came up in your head as to being this type of person is because you know them well enough. You've already connected with them enough to be able to identify their skills and their talents. So if that's the case, it's not a far stretch to reach out and say, hey, I just wanted to touch base with you. I know you're doing some awesome things. If you ever need any help with this or this, let me know. And keep up the great work. It doesn't have to be anything real crazy or outlandish.
Right. Well, I mean, and I think that, I know that there are people who say, how do I make a connection without selling or being a seller at this point in time? Because there's not necessarily an exchange of a product or service, but how do I maintain that connection for future? And I think that you just explained it well in terms of just being human, right?
Yeah,
just caring human. And reaching out.
Just be human, just reach out. And I tell you what, it's possible to do that with strangers too. Because remember how I said, like, when I started, I accidentally became the business intermediary. And it was because I went to a coffee shop every day. I volunteered there a little bit. And then when the owner, who was one of those critical connections, he was an influencer, right? He's the owner. So he's the influencer of this circle. He introduced me to a lot of the people that came in and was like, oh, you should know Sharon, da-da-da-da-da. And so, again, the critical connection came into play. And then it was just about asking questions. Be more curious than you are interested in telling people about yourself. If you're curious about what people are doing and you really are like, whoa, that's so cool, tell me more, they're going to tell you more to the point that they finally are comfortable with sharing one key piece of information, and that is what is your biggest problem. And you're not necessarily asking that question, you're waiting for the answer, because eventually that's what I found was I was talking to all these people and I was so excited about being able to have these conversations with business owners and with organization leaders, like civic leaders and things like that. I was just really like, wow, that's so cool. And, I was really caught up in the fact that I was making these connections. Well, eventually, after a few conversations, what ended up happening is it was like, well, how's that project going? Man, it's going great, but I just can't seem to find this piece of the puzzle. And I'm like, oh, well, you should talk to so-and-so. And that's when it started happening. That's when it was like, oh. So that's when they were open enough to share their needs. That's when you've really got a critical connection, because people don't share their needs with people that they don't think can solve their problems. in one way, shape, or form or another.
Right.
So once they start sharing, once you're inquisitive and you're asking questions enough, and they can see that you really do want to know more and that you really are interested in what they're doing, that's when they really start opening up about what they need. And as a super connector, as soon as you have that demand, it's almost inevitable that the supply shows up for you.
Right.
In one way, shape, or form.
Oh my gosh, this has been amazing.
So much fun.
Can you believe it? Time's up already? Can you believe it?
I know. That's why I said we could talk. Like, I remember the first time we were on the phone together, and it was like, girl, we have to work. Like, we've got to get off the phone. We've got to go back and work, because it was like a couple hours, I think, that we had gotten stuck in like this rabbit hole of just loving on each other's missions and visions. Yes. So it's been a very, very awesome, and it's been truly blessed time for me.
I love you, Sharon. And I'm so excited that you came on the show today. So how can people find you, and where? I know that as soon as I get my hands on the 22 Connections of Freedom, I'm going to share that bad boy everywhere. But tell everybody how they can connect with you and find you on social media, your website, etc.
Yes. I love connecting on Facebook. I use my personal profile. It's Sharon Holmes. I also have a business page, but I love connecting with people. So if you're not and of course nobody in your audience is, but if you're not a stalker or creeper, hit me up on Facebook and let's connect. LinkedIn is also an awesome place to connect with me. It's, again, Sharon Holmes there. One thing that I would love is for everybody to be on the lookout, because I am relaunching my website. Right now, my website is very basic because as a business intermediary, I didn't need to advertise. It was very word of mouth. Of course, as a connector, you kind of, I got that, I could kind of do that. So what I'm doing now is I'm stepping away from being a business intermediary and only doing that for very select people in a very niche market. And that is because that takes a lot of work, the one-on-one connecting. And so I'm getting away from that. And what I'm doing is I'm building a website for connectors by connectors. And I'm going to, instead of teach people how to connect, I want to talk to people that are like me, that had no clue what they were doing, but they know that they have this like connection ability, and they want to somehow monetize that into a business. So I'm putting that together. Be on the lookout for that. In the meantime, you can check me out at sholmesconsulting.com. And in terms of the 22 Connections of Freedom, I was holding on to that bad boy like it was my life. It was as if it was like I didn't want to let it go. And it wasn't until I agreed to come on here and talk to you that I was like, it's time to let this go.
That's amazing.
I know. So Abdul is, he is formatting that as we speak. Okay. And I doubt I put that on my website. I'll probably put it on a landing page with an opt-in, something like that. But I will make sure that your team also has access to it and that you guys can share it too, because it's time. I realized it was like, this is ready. It was kind of like one of those birthing moments, like 22 Connections of Freedom is ready to be out there. And this is kind of like a birthday party for it.
Yay. Thank you again for being here.
Oh, thank you so much, sweetie. It was fabulous. And to all of your guests and your audience, love on this woman. Give her all of your love and your great vibes to keep this going, because the world needs Kristen. It needs her message. It needs her smart, just whip smart, no bullshit way of dealing with people's excellence. And I'm telling you, there's nothing more fascinating and more beautiful than a woman who is helping to bring out the fascination and the beauty in other people and other women especially.
And digging so that's deep what I love to make it happen, because it's not surface work.
Exactly. That's always what I've said, is that it's like you go so much deeper, and between the education and the desire and the just, like I said, just being whip smart, we need more of this real transformative energy in the coaching industry. No more fluff. No more, no more surface level stuff. Let's lift up the people who are willing to stand in the trenches and really dig in deep with people. And that's exactly what you do. So thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thank you. All right. Thank you, everyone, for listening. It's been another fabulous show. To continue the conversation, hop on over to the Seekers group on Facebook, www.facebook.com/groups/The Seekers Path. Until next time, believe, peeps, that you are meant for more and keep seeking that path for you. Love, love, love. Bye.
Thanks for tuning in to Meant for More, the Seeker's Guide to Success. But the fun doesn't end here. Head over to KristenLloyd.com for your Seeker's Guide workbook filled with exercises to help you go from mediocre to magically magnificent.